Hopefully everyone can hear me. Hopefully also the online part can hear me. Today I'm going to talk about a new framework which has been created this year. So there's always a new framework every year. And I'm trying to sell it to you today. I'm not involved into the development, but I found it, so I wanted to present it today. So what I want to show is how Tanstack Start is going to close the gap between frontend and client and server, and how it eliminates runtime errors. And our mission today, if the slides goes well, is to modernize my personal budget app, because this is what I was doing this year, and because it was time to refresh this app. This is the third refresh of this application, and I have used the very past different frameworks, different technologies. The very first version was in PHP and Js. Then I dumped PHP and was doing a Java backend. And this time I wanted to see, okay, what can be done this year? And I came across JavaScript and TypeScript, and I wanted to take a closer look into it, and was looking into what can I use now as a state-of-the-art framework. The goal was to track my expenses, track my income, have some categories, simple usage, user authentication, because my wife and I'm using it in parallel. Of course, some charts would be also nice. So a typical budget application. PWA was then added later, and now I can install it into my phone. As I have recognized it in the previous version, there's always a problem with the backend and the frontend. They are communicating between over APIs, and these APIs have to be synchronized between frontend and backend. And if you use different technologies on backend and frontend, you always have to talk to each other, which is good, because talking is something every team needs. But often it doesn't work very well, because sometimes somebody is changing the backend variables, and then the frontend has to change them too. And this leads to errors and frustration sometimes. If it's not an automatic documentation, it's going to be often outdated. Of course, now we have hooks and actions which are going to run automatically and update the documentation immediately after a new pull request was merged. But often documentation is something which is not very often present if some changes are happening. If you're using public API, then of course you have to guess what the intent was, and at least you have to talk to each other to understand what backend should deliver, or what the frontend wants to have. I was looking in the beginning of the year into Next.js, but I kind of didn't like it very much. Just small pieces which I was not really sure about why they are there. Most of the time, these use server, use client was kind of struggling me in my head. I didn't know, of course, it says use server, then it should run on the server, use client should run on the client. But when do you use what? I never used Next before, so it was my first time. And this was the part which I really didn't like very much. Also, with this directive, you really can't use much of the code from the backend and the front end. or it has some methods in there which are shared, but it makes things more complicated as they have to be. I think they are on purpose in Next.js, and developers are living with this directives, but as I found out later with my research, a new framework came up, and I found it very exciting because it was telling me client first, because I was looking into, okay, I wanted to make this app as React app. I want to have a shared backend solution, everything in one application, where you really can easily share code between frontend and backend. And Tanstack Start is kind of promising this. And as of now, I'm doing a quite good job. Tanstack Start at the moment is in a beta version. For my personal app, it's okay. I can deal with this part. I can make these changes if they are breaking. When I started to rewrite my application, it was alpha, and over a couple of weeks, a lot of things have been broken. I had to read a lot and talk to, and made some tickets open to discuss things. But overall, the changes have been really small and incremental, so that I could keep up with this status. It's built on Vite, Nitro, and Tanstack Start. Vite and Nitro are building basically delivering the server part, which is then pushing out the data. And what is Tanstack Start is selling is that you have compile time types between client and front end and backend, basically. How does it do this? In the backend part, actually, you don't see really much if you are in the backend or in front end, but there's small hints like the use server and the use client in Next.js. For example, here we have this create server function, which is basically the defined endpoint of the backend to deliver data to the front end. It's creating a function, in this time get transactions, and in this handler, it will then run whatever needs to be run to get all the data from the database. I kept it simple. I just pushed in there Prisma as a database backend ORM, and just push it directly in there. On the client side, you can just use get transaction and receive the data in the way the backend is delivering it. Also type safe. This means if I define with Prisma my full transaction, how it should look like, I will receive the same kind of structure on the client side too. The team behind is Tanner Lindsay, and of course also Manuel Schiller. They and also a lot of other people are building these frameworks. They are doing open source frameworks, or basically the router part, which is at the core of Tanstack Start, is basically running by them. And they have this philosophy that the framework should not it's just a tool and should not be the base of your app, which is kind of course, you choose a framework on a certain purpose to solve your problem in this case. Okay, let's deep dive a little bit more into how things are working or how things are getting connected. So we have this server function. This time I want to create a transaction. I tell, okay, it's a post HTTP request. We have some validation in there. This validation or validator is taking a sort validation directly. The handler is taking then getting the everything what is validated in here as a data point, and because we use sort in this part, we get also to know this is a number or this is a string or whatever validation part is. I will take a closer look later when I show the code. This kind of data is also type safe in this case. With this, we can use Prisma to create a new data entry and then return the transaction when it's done. Okay, now we jump back into the front-end part. Here, I would like to show that it's basically a form. It's going to be handled, in this case, with this handle submit in a very primitive way. You just use the function I have just created or shown before and push in the data. Actually, this is not 100% correct. I see there was technically you have to put in data node before and then push all the data in there. I should correct this. And with this part, the server function is getting executed. All the necessary information which are sent between frontend and backend are handled within the server and are handled inside Tanstack. I can also show later the networks, what is flowing between frontend and backend. And there is no, all the logic is basically baked into this function call. And with this, you can get also this kind of type safety where you are able to tell when you have a change in the create transaction because you need another field, then it could be reflected in the front-end part as well. So most of the time we have seen backend related. Now we are looking at the front-end. Front-end is done with, this is the routing part where you are basically telling the browser which kind of route it can be accessed here. When you're running while developing the server and you create this route or this file inside the routes folder, it will automatically create this part for you, which is also nice for development. And it's based on, that's like also the next app router it's doing, it's basically how the file is named. It will also translate it into the URL. This router has a loader function, and this loader function can also call these backend server functions. And when the data is loaded, the component is going to be shown. And if you want to link, for example, to this page, there's also a link element in there where you have the same route. From the IDE, you get support to write these routes. Everything what you have defined over here is also available here in the to part. And with these parameters, you can then push, for example, the ID in there. And if this type of ID will change from string to number or from number to string, for whatever reason, this type safety is also baked into here so that it will notify the developer and say, okay, there was some change happening. Please take care of it. Streaming and as a server-side rendering, I have not used it very much, but it's part and also baked in there. You can wait for the response or let longer running responses just be there and then also stream them back as soon they are there. But about this part, I cannot tell much at the moment because I have not used it already. This part of the code is living in both sides, on the server and on the client side. And the framework is taking care when it's running at what stage. When the code is first loaded, when the first request is hitting the server, everything is being part of the server. And as soon as it's getting delivered to the client, the rest of the client is then being done on this side. So this means we have, instead of a traditional architecture, front-end and back-end baked in different technologies, we can have one single repository where we can have routes living in there, services where you have your database queries, and each of everything is looking synchronized. I will show code examples a little bit later, more in detail, just to go through it. Here again, we have this create a server function. It's going to have, it should return as many transactions as possible with categories true. This is part of the Prisma dialect. You can easily get relations within GraphQL in a GraphQL form back. So this means this transaction will include categories as well if they are there, and also create transactions have next to validators also the possibility to include middleware where you have authentication, logging, whatever you need in this case. This I would want to show in the live demo then later. So what I have experienced is you're getting much faster in developing. Of course, I was developing this budget app on my own. I had not to talk to anyone else. I could do this all in my head and design whatever I wanted to do. But in theory, you can easily create new features next to each other and without any problems of this types, missing types when you have to talk with backend and frontend together. For me, right now, the disadvantages, of course, it's not production ready right now. It's still beta. Things can break. The community is small, but growing quite fast. Also, demos and tutorials are available, but as soon something is changing from beta because of the beta status, they are often quite fast outdated in this case. But this didn't stop me to use it, and I really like the experience I have as a developer where I just write my code and don't have to think, okay, how do I get the data from A to B? Okay, let's take a look into the demo. So this is what I have created. Let's give it a refresh. So, okay. My small budget app is going to have, yeah, I was waiting for the refresh. I think now it's done. So we have a small form where you can enter the amount. We have categories. They can be managed in a list. You have a date. In some categories, you also have the possibilities of giving a note. And of course, each are shown, in this case, monthly, so that you can easily switch between months. Also managing categories. There are templates where you can choose from. There is some reports with some nice graphs, with all fake data, or seeded data in this case. So, and how is this working? I would like to show a little bit of the network part. Every time, there are some things integrated already, which I didn't know before, but I find it quite useful. Every time you move your mouse between next to an element, it's already prefetching the content. So it's when you click on it, it's already there, and this is something which comes with the framework automatically. I didn't have to do anything here. And if you look at the request here, you see how maybe I'm not sure if I can make it larger, how this request is going to be. So you have a very an endpoint with server functions, and everything what is going on there is basically is done by the framework itself. I have not to do anything of that part. And this is the part, if you don't care how things are working in this case, and if you don't, until now I have no problems with this part, then you get it out of the box. And what you get as a result is basically this is the session part. Sorry, this is the list of transactions. The result is then what the endpoint, what you have described in the endpoint in this case.
If you can hit Control Plus and also do that.
Only
I have to focus on the
Interesting. Sehr gut. Dankeschön. So also the JSON encoding and decoding is something which is done by the framework itself. I actually just push. I will take a look into that function service transaction API. Let me see. My screen is not that fast right now. Sorry, I have to switch to here. Like here. Now, take a look into the code. The part where we have looked into is inside services, categories, transactions, API. And here we have the server function where I have all the logic to get the data from. As I said, it's creating this a create server function is always to be a get endpoint. I have a validation part in here because I want just for a particular month of the year this data. And with this sort validation, I get immediately the data part back and see, okay, data consists of month of the year and query part because I have some search parameters. And with these search parameters, I am able to query my database with Prisma and try to find the transactions based on the where clause, include the categories because I wanted to show them too, just the name, make some small filtering because of the amount, and then transform it into an object which I want to have on the backend on the front end side. When I now jump to the server to the front end part, I'm going to my routes. This route is year month. And the index. So this list is going to have transactions as it's going to query these transactions here, and as you see, if I use the inbuilt part, I can see what kind of types I'm getting back from this functionality. And this is very helpful because you can just go in here and say, take a look in the monthly list. I can just take a look into these items, and every item is basically a transaction. This is the object I've defined on the server side.
Can I ask something?
Of course.
Why is there a request made on the front end? Why do I see it in the network tab? I would expect it to be server side generated the whole markup, and then the front end would have to do the requests, right?
This is correct. I have not used server-side rendering until now.
Okay.
I just pushing data in between because JSON is a little bit smaller than having a full HTML run around. Of course, it's possible. But at that moment, when I was trying to refresh my application, I still was stuck in my old habit of sending data back and forth. So I was trying to just get the information from the backend and creating these React app. And of course, this can be a server rendered function as well, where you can push the whole component to the browser in this case. But I really would need to take a look how to change this part, but would be not a problem. As I remember, when I remember correctly, you can just go to that server function and just reply this component, send this component as a return, and then the rest will done automatically. Okay, as I said, when I'm running this application, because I always want to see some things, when I make some changes, I get some support for development. If I create a new file, which is telling me, in this case, test, it will be immediately creating all the things which is necessary to create a route for me. And this is the part where I say as a developer, okay, that's nice. I don't have to do that. I just fill in my content and do the rest is done by the framework itself. But this is also just a construct. You can always change whatever whatever you need there. What else to show? A quick look into the start of this application. The start of the application is the __ route txt and the router txt itself. Both are in combination, are creating all the logic which needs to be handled for the handling of all the routes and everything else. How this magic is done by creating these routes and this type safety through generated files. All this generation is happening in the background. This route tree gen.ts file is updated every time I make some changes to the routes. And with this, I'm able to know what kind of types are in my system and how this whole type safety is going to work. Okay. Just quick 1 second. Any questions to application or here right now? Otherwise, I would wrap up my talk.
So I understand you're basically having the same type in the backend and the frontend.
Okay.
You have a type in the backend and you're using this type on the frontend, right?
Yes, correct.
Are there places where you want to use a different type in the frontend? And how do you handle that? Or maybe
in this case, you would just create another type and transform what you need from A to B. In this case, and would use this type in the front end. But this type would still live in server and on the server side and the client side, because the server will transform this data for you into the new objects and then send it to the client part. Yeah.
For me, it's maybe like more of a big picture question, but this is a React thing, so React makes this necessary because it doesn't have that project. That's maybe my question. Because I'm from the Svelte world, this is all built in, and so I'm wondering why you need an extra tool. And this my question is like, so this is like a React thing you need.
Kind of. React is just the front end, basically. So if you're creating a React app, you just have only front end. You have your components which are stacking together. And all the server logic or how you get data is not built into React itself. So you have a couple of router tools. One is built into Tanstack Start. But all these things are kind of surrounding React to make these the things like router switching, query URLs, and something else possible.
Didn't have React server components recently? Don't they do the same thing, or don't they have the type safety? I just assumed because in Svelte you have the remote functions and they're the same. It's basically looks very similar, and they're always compared with remote with the server components. So I assume server components do what you showed, or maybe not.
This question I can't answer right now. Maybe someone else can.
SvelteKit, well, yeah, it's SvelteKit. So yeah, I'm using both together, but yeah,
the server components need to be supported by the framework. So you have Next.js, which supports server components, and I don't know about Tanstack Start, but out of the box, React doesn't support it. And in fact, the React team doesn't recommend just using React. You should always use something like Next.js, for example, Tanstack Start, or yes.
Okay, because so the point of this is that it's not built in the whole.
Yes, right. Okay, yeah. It's on a UI basically what you're creating. Yeah. Also, the server functions are also like TRPC. So you have a call here which is going to the server. It's the similar technology in this case.
So Tanstack is basically the RPC thing, the router and the type safety. So React is can you switch from React to another framework?
They are using, you can also use Solid, but at the moment, of course you can. You don't have to use React in this case, but you can.
But the router is built in. So
The router is built in, yes. So Tanstack Start, there's this this React router from Tanstack, and this is and Tanstack Start is basically the surrounding to use it properly with the server functions and the server functionality.
And the router is only file-based, or could I define any other routes? For example, if I use maybe German routes, but don't want to use the German file names, can I do that?
As of now, yes, I think so. I did not need to use that, but of course, in other applications, it's necessary. And you have these virtual file routes which you can create. And because this router is built into Tanstack Start, you can everything what you can do here, you can do with Tanstack Start too. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, if you want to try it out,
One question.
Yeah.
The auto completion you just showed when creating file and it fills up the file. Is it a plugin for this code? Or how is it? Or is the server running in the background that scans the files and fills it up?
Yes, correct. This is the magic behind. So you need to run the server in the background.
Yeah.
That this magic is happening. Also creating this, I just try to change to my whole settings. Yeah. So there are read configurations. We have this Tanstack Start read plugin, and with this you get the functionality that everything what needs to be generated automatically are generated. So basically, in this case, it is always going to generate this route tree gen file and also other points of contact where all the communication is happening. Yeah.
Another question. So is live reloading of the front JavaScript code built in?
Yes.
On read, right?
Yes.
So
as soon I change something, I just have to open a browser and then it will automatically change as well. Right.
Are we at the official question round yet?
Almost. I have only 2 slides or 2 slides left. We can do it immediately. So
that's fine.
I just wanted to tell how to start. I also, because I'm living on the edge right now, also using bun. Needed to try everything. Was not easy sometimes because I wanted to also use bun SQLite because it's built in. But this was not easy with CRISPR, so I created an adapter for this. Mostly vibe coded it, but it's not working 100%. But, so if you want to start, you choose create start app. And you have also some options to already use Tailwind, for example, as framework, as UI framework, and you can make these already as add-ons into this, and they will create the whole application, this skeleton for the application.
I have one question.
Yes, please.
Regarding deployment, is there already support with the typical PAS vendors like Vercel, Netlify?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome.
Yes, they have from the first minute on. They had a page where you can directly use it. For this, you need to change certain things in the read configuration. In this, you define the target for what kind of where you want to let it run. And they already created a lot of possibilities here. So because I'm using bun, I need to use target bun. Yes, so it's possible. There are also some minimal setups and kitchen sink with some more features. Everything you will find on Tanstack /start. They have a huge and a good documentation, mostly up to date with the current development. Not only mostly, they are up to date with the current development and of course the community behind it as well. So for me, it was important to have type safety in both worlds. I didn't want to have the hassle which I had before on synchronizing backend and front end, and everything lives in Node or in my case bun. So, and even it's better, my application is running quite stable. A few tweaks I had to do, of course, because I was switching from alpha to beta. And there are probably some more smaller details they are going to tweak and improve. Right. Then I'm open for discussion now.